Welcome to Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums, the podcast for professional mums who are doing it all. I'm Jasmine, mum of two, qualified social worker and lover of personal and professional development. And I know firsthand what it's like to juggle career, parenting and everything in between. Here, we dive into real conversations about motherhood, career, health, well-being, and the daily balancing act that comes with it. You'll hear from experts in the field, as well as everyday professional mums sharing their stories, struggles, and wins. So grab your favorite hot drink or reheat the one you forgot about, and let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me on episode 9 of Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums. The simple message of it takes a village is as relevant as ever. We are all in this together. And this is a quote by Hillary Clinton in her famous speech, "It takes a village." It takes a village as a concept originates from an African proverb. And although I've never been to Africa, I am aware that traditional ways of living in Africa meant that people were living in villages and in close-knit communities in which everyone knew everyone and people were prepared to support with child rearing. And there are definitely communities like that that still remain throughout the world, in which it's not just seen as the parent's responsibility, primarily the mother. In a lot of Western communities, it's often the mother that overwhelmingly has the responsibility for caring for the children, as well as working and tending to the household as well. So the way in which a lot of us live is more of an individualist style of parenting, in which if we're in a two-parent home in which ideally both parents are actively involved in the daily care of the children, and given the cost of living, it's quite common for there to be two working parents in the home. This is in stark contrast to many communities in which often they could be neighbors or friends of the parents, grandparents. It could just be another trusted community member. They actually provide support to parents to help care for their children. And caring for children isn't seen as the sole responsibility of the, nuclear family unit of, say, two parents or even one parent and a child or children. When I opened this podcast with the Hillary Clinton quote that it takes a village and we are all in this together, what images came into your mind when I mentioned the word village? Did your mind cast you to the thought of a primitive village somewhere in which people are living off the land, tending to livestock, maybe don't have access to technology? Did you think, well, that's okay for people who live quite a more traditional, maybe more agricultural lifestyle? Did your mind think, well, that concept of it takes a village is okay for people like that, but then for me, I don't have any such village and I'm so busy and I'm just racing around and working and picking up the children, dropping them off, taking them to their after school activities, trying to fit in somewhat of a self-care routine? Did you find yourself thinking that other people have that village around them, but it's not possible for you? I know for myself, when I think about that concept of a village, especially if you live in a capital city or a major regional town, is you might think that you don't have a village. There's no such thing for you. And quite often, when people move and people are moving across countries, across cities, across towns, and you may not have the same support networks that you once did. So sometimes there is a lack of family support that we can access. So we're going to be exploring further around how else we can draw people in and create somewhat of a village. So my daughters are very busy young ladies. They do multiple extracurricular activities, and most parents can relate, where you feel like you're constantly in the car, you're going from activity to activity, and you don't always have time to even stop and reflect on how your workday has been, because you're just going from straight from work to after school activities, feeding the kids dinner, then you go to bed, and then the cycle repeats. It's like a never ending cycle. I know sometimes that's what it has felt like for me, definitely. I'm going to give an example of something that happened in our life and how it was really important to feel confident enough to be able to reach out for help for those from those around us, and also that sometimes your village isn't as obvious as you may think. So sometimes when we think of village, we think, do we have extended family support? Are there grandparents that can pick up the children? Are there, aunts and uncles? And sometimes there aren't any such options. So here's an example of how I had to think creatively one evening. So there was one particular evening, and my daughters were at one of their weekly sport classes, and I was very unwell. All I was able to do at that time was drop them off at their activity, and I remained in the car. I don't even know if I was appropriately dressed. I may have been in pajamas. I'm not really sure, but most likely I was. And so I was able to drop them off. Normally, I would stay at their activities, but I was not able to. And my husband wasn't home. He had some kind of prior engagement. I can't remember what it was. So I was essentially alone. And I dropped my daughters off, and I had managed to drive. I remember feeling really nauseous, so even driving was a struggle. So I dropped my daughters off at their activity, and they both have good friends at their activity. So they were surrounded by their friends, the teacher was there, and also the other children's mothers. So they certainly weren't alone. Some parents do what I call the dump and run. I normally don't do the dump and run, but in this case, I had to make an exception to my own self-imposed rule. So I went home and I relaxed a little bit. I tried to have a nap, and it got closer to the time when I needed to return to pick up my daughters. My husband still wasn't home, and he was a fair distance away. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm actually well enough and feel competent to drive to pick them up. So I felt a moment of kind of anxiety and apprehension rising in my chest at that time. And then I thought about the other parents, and I'd become good friends with some of the other parents at the sporting class. So I'm not always the one to easily ask for help, but I thought in this situation it was absolutely necessary. And ever since this time, I don't hesitate to reach out for help when I need it, because it was very much needed at this time. So, so I text one of the other mums who was at the sporting event and let her know that I was really unwell, and would she be able to drop my daughters at home. She was, of course, more than happy to assist and was, offering all her well wishes. And I found myself thinking, why didn't I reach out for help earlier? I knew when I dropped off my daughters that I was really unwell, that I somehow managed to be able to drive for that distance to drop them off, but I should have planned ahead and reached out for help earlier. So there were a few things that I could have done, but the point of my story is that sometimes the village isn't as obvious as you think. You may not have grandparents who can pick up their children, or, as I said, aunts and uncles. You may not have that. You may be your village may be a self-constructed village in which you've constructed that yourself. Your family has constructed this village of people who are not related to you, but they're really trusted friends, neighbors, parents of school friends as well. So I encourage you all to think about the meaning of the word village and how it can be flexible, and you can definitely draw upon the network that you have created. And what I've found in gaining confidence around asking for help, that I have learned that most people will be more than happy to assist you. And if you're someone like me and you never want anyone to feel like you're taking advantage of their kind nature and you're asking too often, you can always repay the favor. So there's definitely been times in which I've had my daughter's friends over school holidays when I have taken time off work, and then the next week or the next school holidays, then that same friend's family would then have one of my daughters. So it definitely can be reciprocal and mutual. But if we don't stop and think about who's in our village, then we'll never be able to access those support networks. With that in mind, who is in your village? Think about building up your village. And this is definitely something that takes time. It definitely takes time to develop that trust with someone. So if you don't have anyone in your village now, just be patient with the process, as developing trusting relationships definitely takes time. But I invite you to have a look around and see who's already in your village. I remember when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic school, and my school did something amazing, which really embodies that whole concept of it takes a village. So they had a meal drive happening in which families could volunteer to support another family in need by preparing them meals if they were struggling. So, for example, if they had a death in the family, or if someone in the family had like a critical illness, or they were struggling financially, then the school would send some de-identified information on the family, like really just the demographics. So say a family, mum and dad, 2 kids, these are the ages, these are any allergies, these are sort of their favorite types of food to eat. And then they would put a call out to someone else in that meal drive network. And I can't remember what it was called, but let's just call it a meal drive network. And then another family would then make food for them, and it would be kind of no questions asked. You wouldn't know anything about the situation. You wouldn't know who they were. You were just told this is the information, and then you would just drop it at their house. But you just drop it on the front doorstep, ring the doorbell, and flee. So there was no sense of like stigma or shame, and it was done really well. And no one would ever know, oh, it was, that family that needed the support. So it was very much that if you had the capacity to help someone else, then you could help by preparing a meal. and my mum, she was an exceptional cook. I remember she had made shepherd's pie. If you're not familiar, it's a really nice mince mixture with a lot of nice flavors, and then it's topped with mashed potatoes and then cheese, and it's baked in the oven. So then the cheese at the top develops like a crust and it gets really golden and bubbly. It's just really nice. It's a really comforting winter meal. And then my sister made either an apple crumble or an apple pie. I can't remember. I have to ask her. So we were teenagers at the time. I remember my sister and I going with mum in the car to drop off this dinner and dessert for this family in need. And that's an example of something that we can do for others. If we're already making a large pot of soup or pasta, if you know of someone in your community or in your network that is struggling, whether it's struggling financially or whether they have a lot of other family difficulties and they're not able to make the well balanced, nutritious meals for their family, can you offer to drop off a container of food, a lasagna? When you're already cooking, it's not really any extra effort to make a little bit extra for someone else. And I don't know if that's still happening in schools. I know with the increase of allergies, there may be more kind of stringent guidelines around that. And then it may require the person cooking to have like a food handling certificate or something like that. But this is going back a little while, showing my age here. So I don't know how that would work, but there's always ways in which we can help others and build our own village. In this episode, we've spoken a little bit further about the concept of that it takes a village to raise a child and how we can draw in those around us to create our own village, and also seeing it takes a village in action and how I reached out for help when I needed to. And also an example from my high school experience of where this food drive program really embodied that it takes a village to raise a child concept in action. If you found this helpful, I would love it if you would share this episode. And you can also send me a DM or an email and let me know who's in your village and what the concept of it takes a village means to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. It really does mean so much to me. Bye for now. I'll see you next time.